Hey guys, welcome back to the Coon Hub. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell is one that has the world shocked about what women are capable of. But why are we? The only groups that should be surprised by this are those who attach immoral and criminal behavior solely to men. Who would have known that the gender that is supposed to be caring, sympathetic, and kind could be part of such heinous acts? This is the dark side of the opposite that we're not allowed to talk about. Miss Maxwell is just a speck of evil brought to the light, however. I'd say most of us are aware of what goes on behind closed doors in society, with some of the worst stories including mothers, the ones who are supposed to be the pillar of righteousness for their daughters. My question is, did she treat her victims the way she did because she couldn't relate to what it was like to have a child? And that is similar to a question men get asked all the time. Anyway, let's expose the toxic side of those with a box that the movement pretend it doesn't exist.
Prosecutors in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell have rested their case after 10 days and more than 20 witnesses. Maxwell is accused of recruiting and grooming teenage girls to be by her former partner and late financier, Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell denies all charges. The trial will continue on Thursday.
This was the week the jury gained an arresting insight into Ghislaine Maxwell's life for over 2 decades, which the prosecution say was intertwined with Jeffrey Epstein's.
Now back to our top story this morning, the verdict. Trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the former Jeffrey Epstein associate, convicted by a federal jury on 5 of 6 counts, facing now up to 65 years behind bars. Joining us live now is one of Maxwell's victims, Annie Farmer, and her attorney, Sigrid McCauley. This has been a very long journey for you. You were 16 years old when you met Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. It's now been almost 20 years since you first tried to speak out about your... But for years you were discounted, ignored, or simply just not believed. So how does it feel now to finally have this verdict?
It's a tremendous relief to be here. I wasn't sure that this day would ever come, and I just feel so grateful that the jury believed us and sent a strong message that...
Tonight, after 6 days of deliberation, a jury found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of 5 out of 6 federal charges, including trafficking of minors, which is the most serious and carries up to 40 years behind bars.
The road to justice has been far too long, but today, justice has been done.
Throughout the 3-week trial, prosecutors calling 24 witnesses. The heart of their case, 4 women who say they were recruited, groomed, and lured by Maxwell when they were teenagers.
This has been happening for years. They all knew about it. But this is why she was used. It wouldn't be wise to send a man to recruit because of what young girls were taught about us.
Perpetrators of exploitation will be held accountable no matter how much power and privilege that they have.
And Sigrid, what was your reaction? And what does this mean in the bigger sense for the many other women who have alleged their lives were also damaged by Maxwell?
It's really a historic moment in the history of trafficking. What you've seen here is a jury who took it upon themselves to believe in these victims, hear their voices, and render a verdict that told the American public that regardless of power, privilege, whether you're a president or a prince, you will be held accountable.
There were trips around the world, luxury homes, and then the downfall. A woman described by one accuser as sophisticated, elegant, everything I wanted to be. Ghislaine Maxwell, now in court, charged with trafficking. On Monday, the jury heard from a British woman testifying under the pseudonym Kate. She met Ghislaine Maxwell, aged 17, at a time in her life, she says, when she was particularly lonely. She claims that Ms. Maxwell then paved the way for her to be...
For a second consecutive week, Ms. Maxwell's siblings, Kevin and Isabel, held an impromptu press conference on Monday evening. They say their sister is being mistreated while on trial.
In 2021, what on earth are they doing, shackling a 59-year-old woman in this way every day?
Do you think he'd be saying the same thing if this was a man, not his sister, that did what she did to his daughter? Of course not. He'd be begging for his sentencing, or even the chair.
When she represents absolutely no threat to the community, that was agreed by the judge and by the prosecution.
Kevin, has Ghislaine raised this herself? Is she able to raise this with the judge? Or...
No, I mean, I can't speak about that, but basically she has asked us to raise these, and we're happy to do that on her behalf.
Will Ghislaine Maxwell start naming names? That's the big question after the socialite was convicted of being Jeffrey Epstein's partner in crime.
Do you think that she could name names in order to get a lighter sentence?
I hope she does. 1 convicted, 1 down, and the entire black book to go. This morning, we're going to hear from a woman who's making shocking allegations against Ghislaine Maxwell. In her new book, Silence No More, Surviving My Journey to Hell and Back, Sarah Ransom says she was recruited into Jeffrey Epstein's alleged trafficking ring back in 2006. Maxwell, as you know, is currently on trial. She's charged with recruiting and grooming underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein. Now, she denies all the charges, and Ransom's claims are not part of this case against her.
What does today mean for you?
Sarah Ransom says she was recruited into Jeffrey Epstein's world when she was 22. In her book, Ransom says she was approached at a New York City nightclub by a girl about her age who offered to introduce her to Jeffrey Epstein, saying he helps a lot of young girls achieve their dreams. Days later, Ransom went to Epstein's private island in the Caribbean with other young girls, including her recruiter and Ghislaine Maxwell.
What was it that Ghislaine did to manipulate girls in order to serve them up to Jeffrey Epstein? What was her role in the crime?
So Ghislaine was the main enforcer. She was, even before I met Ghislaine, Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine. She is the lady of the house. She is, you just don't cross her. She forced me into Jeffrey's room. And then when I walked out, limped. I mean, whatever you do when you've just been. I looked at her, and that's why it was really important for me to be there and look at her, because when I looked at her, after she forced me into that room, she smiled. And that's why I had to be there, because you know what? I smiled right back at her when I saw her.
This morning, that stunning verdict in the high-profile trafficking trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the jury finding the British socialite guilty on 5 of 6 counts. Maxwell, who once ran in the circle of presidents and princes, led out of the courtroom Wednesday by 2 U.S. Marshals, now waking up behind bars, facing up to 65 years in prison.
65 years in prison.
A unanimous jury has found Ghislaine Maxwell guilty of one of the worst crimes imaginable, crimes that she committed with her longtime partner and co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein.